Hi, I'm Karen. I'm 61. I used to think I understood silence, the kind that came after a long day when the dishwasher hummed and the news played low on TV. But after Robert died, I learned what real silence was. It wasn't quiet, it was absence. A thick, heavy nothing that filled every inch of our house. It followed me from room to room, made the clock ticks louder, the faucet drips sharper. We were married for 37 years. He died in his sleep beside me. A heart attack. No goodbyes, no warning. I woke up to a stillness that hasn't left me since. In the days that followed, people came. Then they left. Casseroles stacked up in the fridge, sympathy cards piled on the dining table. I went through the motions, smiled, nodded, said, "Thank you," too many times. Then one morning, I stood in the hallway, toothbrush in hand, and realized I hadn't brushed my teeth in 3 days. I didn't cry because of the toothbrush. I cried because I'd forgotten how to be a person. 2 days after the funeral, my son Matthew showed up. "Just for a while," he said. He brought his duffel bag, his laptop, and that old denim jacket he wore back in high school, the one with the rip under the right arm. Still smelled like him. A mix of cologne, leftover cigarette smoke, and something warmer I couldn't name. At first, having him home was a blessing. He brought noise back into the house, real living noise. Coffee brewing in the morning, cabinet doors, left open, keyboard clacks from the dining table. He made me laugh again. Sometimes at night we'd sit on the couch watching old crime shows. His arm would settle around my shoulders. I'd lean into him without thinking, the way I used to when he was little and scared of thunderstorms. Then came the storm. 2 weeks in, the power went out. Rain slammed the windows and we lit candles in the living room. I found an old bottle of red in the pantry and we poured a glass each. We didn't talk much at first. Just sat there letting the sound of rain fill in the empty spaces between us. Then he said, "It feels strange being back here, but not bad." I nodded. "It's nice not to be alone." He looked over, soft and steady. "You're not alone, Mom. I'm here." And something in me shifted. It wasn't a dramatic thing. No music swelled in the background. But I remember that moment so clearly, how he looked at me like I was more than just Mom. How my heart skipped. How I blamed the wine, the grief, the storm outside. But I knew. I knew something had changed. And just before he got up to blow out the candles, he paused behind the couch. His hand brushed my shoulder. A gentle squeeze. Then he leaned in and pressed his forehead to mine just for a second. He didn't say a word, but I heard everything. The next morning, I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Just the storm. Just the wine. Just grief playing tricks on two people who'd been through too much. But that didn't explain the way Matthew looked at me over breakfast, or the way I looked back. He was standing by the kitchen window pouring coffee. The early light softened him, white t-shirt, damp hair, the same sleepy grin he used to flash when he was 10, and sneaking a Pop-Tart. "Want a cup?" he asked. I nodded. "Please." He handed me the mug, his fingers brushing mine. Neither of us pulled away right away, and something in my chest fluttered, not panic, just awareness. We spent the day cleaning out the attic. I hadn't been up there since Robert passed. "Come on," Matthew said gently. "It's time." He wasn't wrong. The attic was dusty and dim, full of boxes labeled in Robert's handwriting. Old golf clubs, letters from college, a guitar he hadn't played in a decade. We sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting through the years. I found a photo, Robert holding baby Matthew at the beach. The waves in the background, the sun in their hair. I smiled without meaning to. Matthew took the photo, studied it. "You were a good mom," he said. "Still are." I looked at him then, not as my son, but as a man. 30 now. Broader in the shoulders. Eyes that held more than they used to. A quiet strength I hadn't noticed until now. He reached for my hand and held it. Warm. Gentle. "We're going to be okay," he said. And for the first time since the funeral, I believed him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, the soft whir barely filling the room. My mind ran laps. What was normal? What was expected? What would people say? But then I thought about being held, about being seen, and how for weeks now Matthew had been the only one to look at me like I was still here, still alive. He'd become a kind of light in all this grief. The next day we tackled the shed out back. The sun was hot. The air smelled like pine and dirt. We laughed more than we worked. At one point I tripped over a loose plank and Matthew caught me, his arms around my waist, holding me steady. I looked up. He didn't move. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I whispered. But I wasn't. Not really. Something had just cracked wide open inside me. He stepped back, slowly cleared his throat. "Let's take a break." I nodded, pretending not to notice the way my hands trembled as I poured lemonade in the kitchen. That evening, we sat in the living room again. Candles, quiet music, 2 glasses of wine. I watched him from the corner of my eye, the way he held the glass, the way he leaned forward to light the last candle, the way he looked at me like I was someone worth knowing all over again. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He just reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His fingertips barely touched my cheek, and that touch stayed with me long after I went to bed. That night, I dreamed of nothing and everything. Not vivid scenes, just feelings, warmth, familiar skin, a presence that wasn't Robert's, but didn't feel wrong. When I woke the next morning, the house felt lighter, like something had shifted, like maybe I had. Matthew was already downstairs, barefoot in the kitchen, frying eggs. He looked up, smiled like he always had, and said, "Morning, beautiful." The words landed softer than they should have. Too soft for a mother, too warm for just polite. I chuckled, flustered. "You're too much." But something in me glowed. We didn't talk about the night before. Not the shed, not the wine, not the way his hand had lingered on my cheek like it had every right to be there. Instead, we ate breakfast, folded laundry, and later that afternoon we took a walk. The trail was quiet, just the two of us, and the sound of leaves crunching beneath our shoes. We crossed a small wooden bridge, the same one Robert and I had walked 100 times. But this time Matthew reached for my hand. No words, just fingers lacing with mine like it was second nature. I didn't stop him. I didn't want to. "You okay?" he asked, his thumb brushing the back of my hand. "Getting there," I said, and I meant it. We stood on that bridge longer than we needed to, just watching the stream below. His shoulder touched mine. I leaned into it. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own skin. That evening, we watched a movie on the couch. He sat close, closer than usual, and at some point his hand came to rest lightly on my knee. Not possessive, not dramatic, just there. A quiet warmth that lit something deep inside me. I didn't move. Not out of confusion, but because I didn't want to. I let myself feel it. The next day, we cleaned out more of the attic. It was our new ritual. Boxes, memories, dust, and stories. We laughed more now. Talked about things we'd never bothered to before. While digging through an old Christmas bin, I found a photo album. Road trip to the Grand Canyon. Matthew was 12. Robert drove the whole way. There was a photo of Matthew asleep in the back seat, clutching a bag of gummy bears like it was treasure. He laughed when he saw it. "I can't believe you kept that." I smiled. "I kept everything. You're my only child." Every little moment mattered. He didn't say anything right away, just looked at me with something heavy in his eyes. "I know you've always been there," he said softly. "For every scraped knee, every heartbreak. You never let go." I swallowed hard. "You were worth holding on to." He took my hand again gently but without hesitation. His gaze lingered on me, deep and deliberate. And for a long time we didn't say a word. We just sat there in the middle of 100 memories, hands intertwined, like it had always been meant that way. That night we made dinner together, pasta and garlic bread and cheap red wine. We danced in the kitchen to an old Sam Cooke record we found in the closet. Badly, joyfully. When I tripped on the rug and fell into him, we both collapsed in laughter. His arms wrapped around me as we lay there on the cool tile, breathless. "You have the most beautiful smile," he whispered. And I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just looked at him and let my smile fade into something softer. Something that wasn't quite a confession, but wasn't denial either. That night, I stood in the bathroom longer than usual. I looked at myself in the mirror, not the widow, not the mother, just me. The lines around my eyes hadn't vanished, but there was color in my cheeks again. A softness in my expression I hadn't seen in months. I looked alive. Downstairs, I heard the lights being switched off, the gentle rhythm of Matthew locking the door, the creak of the floorboard. Sounds that once reminded me of loss now felt like presence, like belonging. When I finally slipped under the covers, I stared at the ceiling fan again. But this time, I wasn't haunted by thoughts. I was grounded, not torn, not ashamed, just aware. The next morning was foggy, the kind of fog that softened the whole backyard into a dream. I stood at the kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching dew slide off the porch railing. I heard him before I saw him. Matthew's footsteps upstairs, the familiar weight of his movement. He came down with a towel draped around his neck, hair still damp. He kissed my cheek like it was habit now, like it had always been. "Morning, beautiful," he said again. It should have felt strange. It didn't. We spent the day sorting through more attic boxes, but it wasn't really about organizing anymore. It had become our way of remembering together, touching the past so we could make room for whatever this new present was becoming. Late in the afternoon, I found a note tucked inside one of Robert's old jackets. It was a grocery list in my handwriting with a heart doodled in the corner. I showed it to Matthew. He smiled, then took my hand and pressed it to his chest. "You've always loved hard," he said, "even in the small ways." That evening we sat by the fire again. 2 books, 1 blanket, shared silence. It was the kind of stillness that holds weight, comfort, meaning. He reached for my hand under the blanket, held it like he wasn't asking, like we both already knew. His thumb moved in slow circles on my skin. That small, tender motion made something stir deep inside me. He looked at me, not past me, not through me, but into me. Like I wasn't just a woman he'd known forever, but someone he was still discovering. "You've always been beautiful," he said quietly. No flirtation, just truth. My heart stuttered. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I just let the words settle where they landed. That night when I got ready for bed, I didn't rush. I brushed my hair with care, put on the soft robe I hadn't worn in months. I caught my reflection again, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't turn away. Later, I heard Matthew outside my door. He knocked once. Soft. "Didn't want you to be alone," he said through the door. A storm was rolling in thunder low in the distance. I pulled back the blanket. "Come in," I said. He climbed into bed beside me like he'd done when he was 5 and scared of thunder. Only now it wasn't fear that brought us together. It was something else. Something unnamed, but no less real. He held me as the thunder rolled across the sky, and when morning came, we were still wrapped around each other, breathing in sync. We didn't speak about it. We didn't need to. The days that followed moved gently. No big moments, no lines drawn. Just quiet routines that filled the house like sunlight through thin curtains. Matthew started making breakfast every morning. He'd hum something while whisking eggs, barefoot hair still damp from the shower. He'd hand me my plate with a smile and a kiss on the top of my hand. No words, just a gesture, but it said everything. We didn't speak in declarations. We didn't need to. Whatever this was, it didn't ask for a name. It just existed, soft and steady, like breath. One Sunday, we stood in the hallway together, staring at the old family photos. Robert's smile, baby Matthew in overalls, his cheeks round and full of life. There was one of the three of us at a pumpkin patch, me with hay in my hair, laughing like I didn't know the camera was watching. Matthew's hand found the small of my back. "Do you ever think about what people would say?" I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes," he said. Then he looked at me, eyes steady. "But they don't know what it's like. To lose someone, to feel everything fall out from under you. And then to find someone who makes you want to stand up again." He turned toward me, took my face in his hands. "You bring me back to life." I don't know how long we stood there. His forehead pressed gently against mine, our breathing slow matching. No one else would have understood that moment, but it wasn't for anyone else. Later that night, I woke up to thunder again. Soft at first, then louder. But it didn't rattle me, because when I reached out, I didn't find emptiness. I found him, Matthew, his arm around my waist, his breath against the back of my neck, warmth where there used to be cold. The next morning, he found me in the kitchen, still wearing the old flannel robe he said made me look cozy enough to hug forever. He came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my shoulders, and rested his chin on my head. "We're doing okay," he whispered. And I believed him. We'd stopped sleeping in separate rooms. It wasn't a decision. It just happened. Like most of this, that evening we played cards in the living room, a bottle of wine between us, music low, laughter easy. At one point, I reached for the deck and our hands met. We both froze. He looked at me. I looked back. And the silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full. Full of every touch, every glance, every unsaid thing between us. He leaned in slow, not with urgency, but with intent. His lips brushed my cheek, then lingered near my jaw. "I don't want to rush you," he said. "You're not," I answered. And I meant it. Because this wasn't about need, it was about presence. About being truly seen, maybe for the first time in years. That night, as we lay in bed, I whispered, "I don't know what this is supposed to be." Matthew traced my knuckles with his thumb. "Me neither," he said. "But I know it's real." A few weeks later, Matthew got a job offer. It came through one evening while we were watching the fire burn low. He stared at the screen, unreadable, then turned to me. "It's in Asheville," he said. "Good company, small town, by the mountains." I nodded slowly, unsure what to feel. "That's a big move." He studied my face. "I won't go if you don't want me to." I smiled. "You should go. You've put everything on hold for me." He reached for my hand. "What if I don't want to go without you?" The words settled between us like an open window. No pressure, no expectation, just a possibility. A door. We gave it a week. Drove out together. Stayed in a small rental house with creaky floors and a view of the woods. We cooked dinner side by side, walked the trails, read on the porch wrapped in one blanket. It felt natural. On the way back, neither of us said much, but the silence was calm. Like we both knew we were no longer standing on the edge of something, we were in it. Back home, everything looked smaller. The house, the town, even the memories. We spent our last weekend sorting through the attic for the final time, packing what mattered, letting go of what didn't. I found a scarf Robert had bought me years ago, soft blue wool. I wrapped it around my shoulders and stood in the doorway. Matthew came up behind me, his hands warm on my arms. "You're allowed to miss him," he whispered. "I do," I said, "but I don't feel lost anymore."